I'm John Mansell. I'm the director of the Grossman Institute for Neuroscience, Quantitative Biology, and Human Behavior at the University of Chicago. The BRAIN Initiative is a major research program supported by private and public funding, which is enabling hundreds of teams of scientists to develop new technologies and use them to understand how the brain works. There are many challenges along the way to that goal, but the main goal that we're working on now is trying to understand dynamic interactions in the brain, how hundreds or thousands of individual brain cells can work together to produce a coordinated activity, a perception, a movement, or a thought.
I'm Tom Asik, Scientific Director at Takeda Clinical Sciences, CNS. The process of drug development now has been mostly based on serendipitous findings and building on themes from prior drugs. Hopefully, with the BRAIN Initiative, we'll have new and better models of models of disease that will translate into better therapeutics for humans.
My name is Bobby Kasturi. I'm a neuroscience researcher at Argonne National Labs and an assistant professor adjunct at the Department of Neurobiology in the University of Chicago. Connectomics, which is a made-up word for a field that's just starting, is this idea that you could map all the connections between all the brain cells in a single brain. And more importantly, perhaps, is the idea that once you had that map, you would understand a lot of the behavior of that animal. So the greatest kind of technological problem in connectomics and in my work, almost anyone who does the work that we do, is that it's easy to collect very large data sets. And so what I mean by a very large data set is if you had a map of every connection in a mouse brain, which is a pretty small brain relative to a human brain, that data set would be something like several billion gigabytes of data. And that's more data than has ever been collected about anything in the history of the world. That's more data than there is in the Library of Congress, even if you included all the movies and pictures and audio and certainly the books there. So we're able to reproduce the amount of data found in the Library of Congress in a trivial amount of time, but we need someone to actually read those books that we produce and make sense of them. Personally, the most important thing the Connectome can teach us is how brains grow up. So humans in particular, and among mammals in general, but humans in particular, were born essentially hopeless and helpless. I have two children, and when they were both born, I was amazed by the idea of how they couldn't do anything for themselves. They couldn't walk, they couldn't talk. I was responsible for everything. Now they're 8 and 5, and they've acquired lots of skills that can't be in their genome. Things like working an iPad or riding a bicycle. Those are things that they have learned by watching. And I suspect there are deep changes in the brain associated with those skills. I suspect that those changes are at the level of connections between neurons. So what I would really love to know is, how do brains grow?